and welcome to Night Callers Bigfoot Radio. It is March 18th, and you're here with your hosts, Lauren Smith and Dustin Clark. How are you doing tonight, Dustin?
I am doing great. How are you doing, Lauren?
I'm doing okay. This COVID thing is kind of stressful, but we're doing good.
Yeah, it's definitely getting a little out of hand.
It is. Absolutely. That's a nice way of putting it. I want to apologize to everyone that we have not had a show in the last couple weeks. I have been dealing with the loss of a loved one and took a break from the show, but we are back this week. We decided that probably half of you are quarantined in your house right now, and y'all are ready for some new material, so something else to listen to.
Yeah.
And
also,
go ahead.
We would like to let everybody know that a good friend of ours and a good friend of the Bigfoot community, Tanya Nite, she's going through a difficult time right now, and Brian Hoolan, one of my buddies with SBA, set up a GoFundMe account to kind of raise up some money for Tanya. And on our Bigfoot group, Southern Bigfoot Alliance, we are also holding an auction. I think so far we have some beadwork, a package for a package for two to go to Blue Line zip lines down in Mena, Arkansas. And we will also be auctioning off one of the Bigfoot casts that we casted down in southern Oklahoma.
Awesome.
And
that's just
after
so
the show,
far. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was
going to say, and
after
just
the
so
show,
far, there are new donations coming in every day.
Right. And after the show, we'll post the link of the GoFundMe into Night Callers Bigfoot Facebook page and in the group. That way everybody can see it. And if they can, donate a little bit, or y'all can all come to the Southern Bigfoot Alliance group and see all the different things that we have up for auction. That the proceeds will be going to Tanya and her cause. And for those that may not know her by Tanya Nite, she is the one that you keep seeing on Facebook or at the Bigfoot conferences, basically the female Bigfoot that's always running around. Her name is Sasquatch. That is Tanya Nite, and she's an awesome person. She's a great friend of Lauren and I, and everybody loves her, and we just want to try to help her out as much as we can. So I believe that is all the Bigfoot news I have. Do you have any, Lauren?
That's some pretty big Bigfoot news, though. Definitely, she's one of those people that when she shows up as herself or as Sasquatch, she brings joy to every person that she comes into contact with. So we definitely want to help her battle through this and support her as much as we can, show her some love. If you, can't afford to donate money or an item for the raffle even, if you could just go to our page and share the post so that you can get the news out to someone who can help, because we just really want to support her through this. So, that being said, I am ready to talk to our guest. How about you?
I'm more than ready. Let's go.
Okay. All right. So we have John on tonight, and he is an Oklahoma Bigfoot researcher. He was actually born in Dallas and raised in Plano, Texas. He now resides and researches in Honobia, Oklahoma. He is a 16-year U.S. Air Force veteran. He is married to Monica, and I have pictures uploaded where she also goes out with him to research. John is the author of the Sasquatch novel Relics, published in 2017. He was once a Bigfoot skeptic, and now he is a recreational investigator and researcher. He began researching the Bigfoot subject for material to write a novel in 2014 and became hooked on the subject. He then began field investigating and research in 2015. John moved from Sulphur Springs, Texas to Honobia, Oklahoma in 2018. He has been a guest speaker at the Honobia Bigfot Conference in 2019, and he's actually scheduled to speak again this year in October. His investigation and research areas include North Sulphur River, Texas, Long Toll, Arkansas, Brown Springs, Oklahoma, and Honobia, Oklahoma. He's actually currently working on a second novel, Relics 2, The Honobia Creek Devils. His quote is that he is not a Bigfoot expert, but I would like to pick his brain tonight anyway. How are you doing, John?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for coming on. So there's just, so many questions that we have tonight about your research, about your book, about your experiences. But the first question that, we always start off with is, what got you into this topic?
Well, actually, it was writing a novel, and I'm one of those guys, I never thought I'd write a book. I was English class came just before football practice, so I wasn't really thinking about English. So I think if my English teacher had to pick somebody in the book or in the class least likely to write a book, it would have been me. And it came about, my lifelong passion has always been military aviation history, and for years I played a online flight sim, World War II era online flight sim, and there'd be 300 to 400 of us flying on Friday nights. They'd recreate some battle. And one night, and this is how all this started, one night they recreated Operation Torch, and there was 4 of us in a flight. We were supposed to patrol this area on the North African coast. But one of the guys I've been flying with for years starts talking about a Bigfoot encounter he had as a kid. And the other 2 guys are pretty engrossed. And I'm kind of listening to it. And I look off to my left, and here I see these 10 dots, and they're coming fast. And so I called them out, and I turned into them, as you're supposed to do. And they just kept on going down the coast talking about Bigfoot, and I ended up with 10 German guys on me, and I didn't last too long. So as I was floating down in my cyber parachute, I was berating my friend for his Bigfoot story and telling him what an idiot he was for believing in Bigfoot, and, just basically having a little temper tantrum. So the next day, I felt pretty bad and got my composure back, and I called him and I apologized and then said, okay, tell me your Bigfoot story. And he told me it occurred in Florida. And, I was a little confused by that because, like most people that don't pay attention, I always thought it was something that only happened in the Pacific Northwest. So one thing led to another. A couple of weeks later, I saw a link for the movie Willow Creek, and I sent it to him. And I told him, hey, you might like this movie. And he called me and said, well, those lost footage movies, he said, he can't watch them, something about the camera being jerky. And then he said, but I wish we would have thought of that because we could make a good movie. I'm like, how are we going to make a movie? What I didn't realize, because I just knew him on the Internet, he had a production company. He still has it, and he does those 30-minute long infomercials. And he talked to me. He said, you think you could write a story I could make a short film on? And I've been doing some writing for the flight sim, and I've done a little technical writing at a steel mill a few years before, and I thought, I probably could. And I worked on it for maybe 15, 20 hours over the course of a couple of weeks, and he got a big contract in California. He said, hey, man, I got to drop the Bigfoot thing. I'm about to make a lot of money. I understood, and actually I was kind of relieved. And so I blew it off, set it aside, and then my sister saw it. And she's the one that talked me into writing a book or making it into a novel. So that's how it started. And then I started doing research on where to put the place, because originally the setting was going to be Ohio, and he was going to do all the geography legwork for me. So now I'm thinking, well, that's not going to happen, so I started looking on the Internet for Bigfoot sightings. At first I was looking in Texas, and everything was down around Houston, Big Thicket area. I'm sure you've heard of that. And don't really like that part of Texas, and I kept looking. And I started seeing this stuff about Oklahoma. And Sulphur Springs is close to Oklahoma, so I thought, well, let me start looking at that. And then I came across Siege of Honobia on Sasquatch Chronicles. I listened to that, and I thought, okay, I'm going to use that area. Then I started looking at it a little more, and Honobia doesn't have a police department or a hospital or, very little infrastructure, and I needed a town because my main character was going to be a police officer. So I needed a police department, so I chose Tallahassee, Oklahoma, which is about 17 to 20 miles from here on the other side of the mountains. And I just started writing and researching, and to be honest, I didn't get my rear end out of a chair to go do any research the first 8 months. I didn't even visit this part of the state or come into Oklahoma at all. I was using Google Earth to pick all the areas for the scenes in the book. And about 8 months into it, I decided, man, I better go up there and take a look around, make sure I'm getting this right. And I came up, and everything just looked as I hoped it would. And I instantly fell in love with the place. And so that's how I got started on it.
That's pretty awesome.
And
pretty
like
awesome.
I said, I was a skeptic.
Complain.
I was a heavy skeptic for most of the book writing. And I went out a few places here and there, didn't find anything. I looked for any old BFRO reports for around the Sulphur Springs area and checked those places out. And then I talked to a few people that had encounters along the Sulphur River. So I would go down or up there a lot from Sulphur Springs and, never really found anything. Wasn't much going on there. But mainly what I was looking for, I didn't really expect to find anything. I was actually looking for a habitat. There was enough food sources there to feed something as big as Sasquatch is supposed to be. And, there may have been 20 years ago or so, but it kind of grown up around there, and there was a lot of farmland now, not much in the way of woods. Along the river itself is, pretty nice and woolly, but a little thick, but it thins out really quickly and mainly into farmland. So I really was still not too convinced about the whole thing, but it kept nagging at me. I would read all these reports, and I would listen to these talk shows. I'd even listen to yours a few times. That was later after the book was done that I'd listen to yours, but it just kept nagging at me that you had all these witnesses, and they weren't always, some guy, they just pulled off the street. These were, it was police officers, military people, doctors, and it just kept eating at me. I said, well, there's got to be something more to this. So I just kept writing and doing as much research as I could, and I started going into the woods. And I'd gotten on a blog or a bulletin board, and I made a few friends on there. And one guy came up and said he had his brother and somebody else had been run out of a place. They were going to scout for deer hunting, and it was near Dover, Arkansas, Long Pool recreational area. So a bunch of us decided to go up there one weekend, and so I went. I took two of my sons. I had my two oldest sons both served in Iraq. One of them, Thomas, unfortunately lost his legs in 2007, but he's still Thomas, and he wants to do this stuff. So he wanted to go, and my younger son went, and my nephew met us up there as well. So we made the trip up there, and my son and I crossed the creek on Saturday morning, and it was funny. As soon as we got to the creek, on the other side, it's all mountains, and there was just this huge bang, like something on the side of a tree. And I was joking to my son, said, okay, they know we're coming. And I was just playing. And we got halfway across the river, and there was another bang. We got to wait all the way over on the other side, and there was another bang. And then we started exploring, And sure enough, my son came up on these weird footprints. Now, I sent you one. I think it's got the knife by it. And I was telling my son, I said, I think that's a bear footprint. I'd never seen a bear footprint, but I thought that's got to be a bear footprint. But there was something weird about the hill. It had like almost a crescent hill on it. And I said, well, I can't explain that hill except maybe some other animal came up here and stepped on that part of it. And he said, well, look at all this. And there was more of them. Now, they were in looser sand that had kind of been rained on. It wasn't a clear, defined print like the first one. But they all had that same little crescent shape. So I thought, man, that is weird. That's the weirdest footprint I've ever seen. Couldn't explain. It wasn't really human looking, but it didn't look like any other animal either. So I took a couple of pictures. Then we were looking around, and we'd gotten away from where people were completely. And then he finds this huge footprint, and I think I sent you a picture of that. I didn't want to outline it in red, so I didn't. I think it was green or yellow. Everybody uses red.
You did it in green.
You can slightly see the definition. This was it. I only took a picture of it with my phone. That's all I had. I'm not one of those guys that don't go out and buy all the equipment and stuff. I figure, hey, if I got a flashlight, a gun, and a canteen, I'm good to go, and my cell phone. But anyway, so I took as good a picture of it as I could. And then we ran across these rock stackings. Now, yes, humans could have done that, but the only prints around there were those little footprints we'd seen earlier. And where he found a big one, it was like something big was standing there watching something little play around along the beach. That was just the impression I got. Now, anybody else could have looked at that and come up with a different conclusion. But and that's what I told Trevor, my son. I said, man, this looks like a big one was standing here watching its little one play on the beach. And that was just what I took from it. And then we found mussel shells, too, and they were like 50 yards away from the water. And he pointed that out to me, too. And I thought, well, raccoon. He goes, a raccoon would have eaten them down at the river. Oh, yeah, you're right. I said, well, maybe, some guy collected them, came up here and ate them. He said, but there's no campfire. Who's going to eat those freshwater mussels raw? He goes, they'll get sick. And I thought, well, his college is paying off. So I said, well, you got a good point. So we get back to the camp, and we're wanting to tell the other guys about it. Well, the previous night, something had been stomping around the camp, and we all heard it. And everybody was a little on edge by that. We couldn't see anything, though. So the next Saturday night, the other guys had gone up a mountain, and I wanted them to see this stuff. We had to get across the river to do it. Well, sure enough, as soon as they come back, this thunderstorm hits, and just washes us out. So basically, the trip was over. We did hear some vocalizations, but it was hard to tell between the rain on the leaves and the thunder what we were hearing. But that got me really hooked. Then I was thinking, okay, it could just be an animal of some kind, that made those prints. So I said, but that's just not something I've seen before. And so I wanted to go back. So I continued looking around the Sulphur River, and then I started coming up here when I could, but not so much to do research. I decided, well, I got a lot of scenes in the forest at night, so I wanted to come up here and see what the sounds were like in the forest at night. So I come up here one Saturday afternoon and get up here about an hour before dark. I wanted to go to Tallahena and do the hills around there, but I thought it'd be easier to get the ones here near Honobia. And like a dork, I didn't tell anybody where I was going. I didn't bring anything. I didn't have a gun or a flashlight. Just had my cell phone, and I climbed this hill. And it got dark, and I got up there and got turned around and couldn't find my truck. And
oh, no.
So I was I'm getting a little worried, and I thought, man, you're dummy. You should at least told somebody you were coming out here. Well, there's no traffic out here normally. And I got back up on the hill, and luckily a truck came down the mountain. So I said, okay, that road's over there. My truck should be down here. So I went down, still no truck, and then I figured out, okay, I was looking at the wrong, I was that backed up. I was looking at 144, thinking it was Indian Trail Highway. So I really, learned a little lesson there. It's like, don't go out alone anymore, and pay attention to your surroundings while you're out, because that would have just that would have been really embarrassing to get lost and have to spend the night on the mountain. And at the time, I was ignorant of the wildlife here. I didn't realize they had wolves and bear, and I didn't really think they had Sasquatch either. So I was pretty unprepared. And it's a good thing I was amateur writer and not really keen on. Now I'll go deeper into the woods or up the mountain, but then I wasn't ready for it, and obviously I wasn't ready for it.
Oh my gosh! So at what point did you switch from skeptic to believer?
Well, it's okay. After I got the book written, you guys have probably had this happen. You take a lot of teasing. People at work knew I was writing a book, and a couple of them knew what it was about, and I was getting teased about it. So I really, I was pretty dead set on I'm not going to believe any of this. I don't, and I just tell, hey man, it's a novel. Cut me some slack, And so I'm getting toward the end of the book, and what actually moving up here is what got me to being a believer or a knower. And but before I got up here, just before I finished that book, when I wrote the book, I didn't name any of the characters after anybody I knew. And one of the main characters was a Monica. Her name was Monica, and about 2 weeks after I wrote her part of the story out of the book, I meet a Monica at work. And we start, talking and stuff, and it took like 6 months to get her to go out with me. So I'm taking her to Texarkana for dinner, and she said, so you're writing a book, what's it about? And I don't want to tell her, I had a huge crush on her, attractive woman, she's educated. I'm like, I am not telling her I'm writing a Bigfoot book. And so I said, well, I'm just writing a novel. And she said, so what's it about? I said, well, it's in Oklahoma. She's like, well, what's it about? And I'm like, putting my hand over my mouth, Bigfoot, trying to hide. She said, Bigfoot? And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, do you believe in that? And I'm like, well, no, but it makes for a good novel. And she said something, I was expecting to say, okay, take me home, or I'm thinking this is going to be a real short date. And she says, well, I think if they're real, they're Nephilim. And Monica's very spiritual. She's always been into the Bible and stuff. And I got to be honest with you, I didn't know what a Nephilim was. And I'm like, Nephilim? What's a Nephilim? She's like, in Genesis 6 in the Bible. Have you read the Bible? I'm like, no. Well, I can tell you I have now. But at that point I hadn't. But I thought, wow, this she's even neater than I thought. She didn't laugh me out of the truck. So I got the book published, and one of the main locations in the book is, have either of you ever been to Talahena, Oklahoma?
Yes, I have.
Okay,
yeah.
There's the restaurant, Pam's Hateful Hussy Diner. Any of you eaten there?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's a lot of scenes in the book take place there, and just before I shipped the book off for publishing, I called Pam and asked her if it was okay to use her book, because I thought, man, if it's not, I'm going to have to change it all up pretty quick. And she was very gracious. She said, yeah, go ahead. She goes, people are always wanting to use my restaurant for something, and they never do. And so I said, okay. So I sent it off, got it published, and then in November 2016 is when I sent the book off to the publisher. And Monica and I got married in November 2016. So the following September, the book's out, and right around Christmas time, it was January, we decided to run it up here and give Pam a copy of the book. So as we're coming back, there's a little overlook just above Honobia as you're coming back from Talahena in the mountains. And we stop there, and we're looking down in the valley, and it's just beautiful. And we're both talking about, wouldn't it be nice to live here? And about the time we got the word out of our mouths, we got this huge vocalization from the other mountain range opposite. Now, you've been to Honobia, right?
Right.
I assume you have.
Yeah.
The valley's only a mile wide, and we were on the side toward Talahena, and the vocalization came from the Broken Bow side, you know, like if you're going south of Broken Bow. And it was just tremendous. And it's 4:30 in the afternoon. And I look at her and I'm like, man, we got to move up here somehow, some way. We got to move up here. The company I work for had started picking up a lot of business in southeastern Oklahoma. And I'd heard the president say something, the president of the company talk about, hey, we're going to have to hire a guy in Oklahoma. It's probably going to take a couple of years to get him up speed on training. So I barged in the next day and proposed I moved to Oklahoma. And it took a few days, and they didn't have a problem with it. So we had 2 houses between us in Sulphur Springs. We sold one, and we moved up here. And this is where I finally had an encounter, and I was just flabbergasted. And to tell you what happened, I went back to Long Pool again in 2017, took Monica, and Joe, him and I become close friends that first trip. Well, he brought his wife, Kim. And we got up here, and all these times I've been out, I had no activity except the one time there. And I'm thinking, man, lightning is not going to strike twice. Well, we had howls, hoops, we had things shaking trees, banging trees. At one point, I told Joe, I said, you know, it was just him and I outside, and it was late at night. And it just felt like we were being surrounded. I said, man, this feels like we're getting probed. And there was a rifle shot on a mountain near us. There was something screaming up there. All of a sudden, there's a rifle shot. And then it sounded, and it was bipedal, right on the river, right like 30 feet from us. You hear something run through the water and up the side of the hill. By the time we could get a light over there, we just saw water dripping on the opposite bank. So that was the next to last night. The last night we're there, I'm just beat. I'd stayed up like 2 nights in a row. You know, I'm an ex-airman. I need my sleep. Joe's an ex-Marine. He was going to stay up all night. So him and his wife were sitting out there, and Monica and I they brought a little camper. We were in a camper asleep, and all of a sudden, I felt like I'd been asleep for hours, maybe just 15 minutes. Kim opens the camper door. She's like, John, we got a wood knock. And I'm tired. I'm like, I'm not really impressed. I'm like, yeah, okay. She goes, no, like right here. And then she goes, I'm done with Sasquatch. And she got in, slammed the door shut. And she looks at me and goes, John, Joe's out there alone. I'm like, okay. So I went back out there, and it kind of quieted down after that. But earlier that evening, Joe and Kim had walked off. There was a shower area, and the only man-made lights were our fire and the lights at the shower area. You couldn't see any other man-made lights, and there was nobody else in the campgrounds. We would have known. And my wife and I are sitting there by the fire, and Joe and them are just off to my right, about 100 yards away, walking to the shower area, and a rock about the size of my fist just comes rolling up right by the fire. And I look at Monica, and I'm like, oof, now that's spooky. And we didn't hear anything at this time, so, you know, and she said, well, what would do that? I said, well, something with a thumb. I said, bears don't have thumbs. A raccoon ain't going to throw a rock that big, you know. And so I'm really, my whole thing about trying to deny there's something about to all this, it's just starting to really break down. It's just getting weaker and weaker. So we get to move to Honobia. We move in June of 2018. First weekend in August of 2018, I meet some friends, and this was the second time I'd gone to Brown Springs. Have you guys heard about that area?
Yeah,
just right on the border of 35. Now, I've always heard this place is scary, and, you know, I've heard people say they don't like to go down there in the daylight, much less nighttime. Well, my 2 sons and I had been down there previously, and supposedly there's booger tracks everywhere. Well, we didn't see anything. But, you know, we didn't stay that long either. So I went back for a weekend, and nothing really happened. And I got a lot of good chigger bites and things like that. And so come back from that and, you know, met some nice guys. I had a good time. But I come back and I tell Monica, you know, I said, if they're in Brown Springs, they're gone. If they were here, they're gone. I said, I think if they're any place, they're in Long Pool. I said, but when I go to Long Pool, it's like I can feel something. It's something creepy. I said, I don't get that feeling here. And she kind of agreed with me. So then 2 nights later, it was about 9 o'clock. I walked outside to get the dog. He wants to sleep in at night, so I brush him out. He's got long hair, and he gets a lot of sand in his hair. So I brush him out every night before I bring him in. So in summer 2018, Mars was real prominent. I mean, it was beautiful, and especially up here with no lights. You know, stars are just gorgeous, and Mars just looked like a red diamond. It was just beautiful. And I've always liked looking at the sky, so I grabbed Opie by the collar, and I walked around Monica's vehicle, and I was looking up at Mars, and when I did, I tripped the motion sensor on the carport, and the light came on. And I'm looking at Mars, but I see movement, so my eyes automatically look down, and I see this thing on 2 legs just hauling, just right off my property line. And it clears, and it had to be, it felt like 2 seconds. It was probably 3 or 4 seconds. But this thing was on 2 legs, ran right across in front of me, 100 yards away, and he was backlit. There's an old Choctaw church off our property line on the other side, and they have the vapor lights. Well, there's trees and stuff on my property, but he was running, and I could see him between the trees, and I saw him leap. And I thought, wow, there must be a fence there, and he jumped the fence. And I'm just excited, you know. As soon as I saw it, I knew what it was, and it was the weirdest thing. Excuse me. By the way, that's allergies, not corona. Anyway.
I've been saying that for a week straight now.
Yeah, everything's starting to pop and green up here, and it's going to be miserable for a bit. But and the weird thing about it, it was running faster than I'd ever seen anything run, and it wasn't pumping its arms. It had it looked like it had like a surfer's stance with its arms. I never saw it swing its arms until it leaped. And when it leaped, it pumped its arms once, and once it leaped, it was gone. So I just told Monica, you know, there ain't nothing up here, blah, blah, blah. So I run to the door, I open the door, Monica, she comes to the door, and I'm like, I just saw a Sasquatch. And she looks at me, she goes, oh, John. And I'm like, no, serious, you know. I take her back out there, and I'm pointing everything out to her. And so the next morning when it's light, we go over there and we're looking around. Well, it hadn't rained in a week or two, so the ground here is hard anyway. There's no way we were going to find a footprint, but I went over to where it leaped, and there was a pile of rocks and burnt logs there that I didn't know. It was just off my property line. So that's what it had to leap over. And weird thing, too, there's a little Choctaw cemetery there that I didn't realize was there. So it would have come down right in that little Choctaw cemetery. And I walked over the edge of the cemetery. I didn't walk in there because, you know, we're new here, and you know, we hadn't gotten to know people very well, and I didn't want to go traipsing through somebody's cemetery. I didn't know if it was family cemetery. I knew it had something to do with a little church over there, but I didn't want to, you know, anger anybody or do anything wrong, so I didn't really go into the cemetery looking for footprints. But that was it, and I thought, okay, now I'm that guy. I've gone to Honobia, and I've seen a Bigfoot. My wife really doesn't. She believed me, but it grated on me. I was like, man, I've always wanted to see one, but now that I've seen one, I don't like it because I got no other witnesses. You know, I'm standing here by myself, saying what I've seen, and then everybody, oh yeah, well you wrote a Bigfoot book, of course you're going to see a Bigfoot. You know, so I kind of kept it down, and I made the mistake of telling some people on a bulletin board, and Wes Germer was on there, and he saw, in fact, I sent you the picture of what I saw and where it happened, and he saw that, and he asked me to be on his show, and I was still all pumped up, you know. I just seen it, I thought, yeah. So, I called him, and I wasn't on there but maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then after I did that, I thought, maybe I shouldn't have done that. You know, because now, because the locals around here, they're not all of them are very hyped up on the whole Bigfoot thing. A lot of them, you know, make fun of it, make fun of you if you said you've seen one. Now, there are some that will admit they've seen them, but for the most part, a lot of people here, you know, they kind of poke fun at all the people coming looking for Bigfoot, and kind of an inside joke. But so I thought, ain't gonna worry about it. But I just decided to keep it to myself after that. And then 2 months later, Monica sees one. The funny thing about this, though, Monica had 2 other people with her that saw it too, and it was right in the same general area. And then I got the bright idea, I'm like, man, what am I going crawling around these hills or out in these woods? I can just give me a lawn chair and sit on my driveway and see one. But and then everything just went bang. Everything went quiet. Nothing happened for a while. And the funny thing about it here is if I'm thinking about it, or if I'm out there actually looking for something, looking for footprints, walking along the creek or the river, there's nothing ever happens. I don't hear anything. I don't see anything. I don't find anything. It's like anytime I'm not paying attention, though, well, not anytime, but when something happens is when I least expect it. It's like then I'll get a vocalization or I'll hear something weird. One afternoon I was out here working and I kept hearing Monica call my name. And I'm like, what is she doing? And I walked around the house looking for her. I thought she was outside. And I went in the house and said, are you hollering for me? And she's like, no. I said, are you sure you haven't called my name? Or no. And I'm like, okay. So you hear about that kind of stuff happen. But it didn't sound, it sounded like Monica. It didn't sound like some big ape trying to sound like Monica. So I was a little perplexed about it. But there's been a few other things happen that just kind of cemented my belief now. I mean, another thing I didn't understand about when I had my sighting, my dog was with me. And I mean, if a hummingbird comes down the road, that dog barks. He barks at everything. He barks at the UPS guy. He barks at the deer. He barks at the other dogs. He barks at the people going down the road. But he didn't bark at this thing, and he was looking right at it. And the funny thing was, he was looking over there, and his tail was wagging. And now had that been a deer or a hog or, another dog or something, or a person even, he'd have been barking. And he didn't bark at all. It was like he saw his friend or something. It was the weirdest thing, but, I'd always heard they don't like dogs. So I didn't know what to think of that.
I've always heard that dogs usually tuck tail and go in the other direction or stay real close to their owner if they see one.
Right. Well, he was standing right next to me. Maybe that's why he was relaxed. But there are nights I'll take him outside and he kind of skulks and puts his head down and he won't stay out and he wants to go back in the house. So, and, when I would listen, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to say we did have a question from one of our listeners, and he wanted to know, do you still have activity around your house?
We do. Well, it's hard to say if it's activity. I get a lot of vocalizations from the hills, but it's sporadic. It doesn't happen all the time. Now, December of 2018, I don't know. I can't say for sure. I don't know. My eyes were playing tricks on me or what. But I had Christmas lights on the house, so it kind of lit the area up a little bit. And we have 2 sheds, and in between them we got like a little portable carport out there on the side of the property. And it was kind of a balmy evening for December. Monica was outside talking to her daughter on the phone. And I walked out, and I just happened to be looking at her. And when I did, I saw movement behind her. And this huge shadow, I mean, this thing was huge, like walked on just the opposite side of the fence behind the carport. And I guess there must have been fear or concern in my voice because I said, Monica, get in the house. Normally she'd say, why, what? She just went boom right in the house. And I went and got a 12 gauge of my shotgun, and I went out there, and I didn't see anything. And I'm not going to say I did, but I sure thought I did. We've had a weird thing happen this summer. Rocks kept getting thrown into the pool. And, now, of course, it could be a human doing it, but the size of some of these rocks, there's some out by the road, but I don't know anybody around here who's got an arm that good. They can throw. But it seemed like every evening I get in to clean the pool, I'm throwing rocks out of it. And I didn't know what to make of that. Again, I don't know why anybody would do it. There's not that many people out here. Plus, messing around like that out here, maybe not me, but you might get shot by somebody. I mean, the people out here are very nice, but I wouldn't go parading. I wouldn't go skulking around on anybody's property after dark because you don't know what they're going to do. But we do get a lot of vocalizations from time to time, and we did get one. It was this Friday. It would have been 3 weeks ago. Was outside, and there was normal night noises out there. There's some cattle down the road on Indian Highway were mooing, and you could hear the owls and, dogs barking. And then something just let out a scream and 2 hoops on the ridge behind our house there, that north ridge. And the funny thing about it is the whole valley went quiet. The dogs quit barking, the cows quit making noise. It was like everything just decided to shut up as soon as everything let out a howl. Monica did find a print about 4 miles from here. We know a guy that had put a cabin out there, and he said things are happening around his cabin. So we went out there with another guy who he has a show, and he does a little investigation, and we were looking around. Monica found a good print, and we found the strangest. There was rips in the trees, and I thought maybe it was a bear or possibly a deer had done it, but they were going horizontal. Now, I'm thinking it was way too high for antlers, and I've seen a couple of bears up here, but I've never seen one messing with a tree. But I think if they were going to sharpen their claws or do something to a tree, it would be in a vertical direction. All this damage was horizontal. But so we kind of saw this stuff and let the guy know who owns the cabin. He's in Dallas. What we found, and he's like, yeah, okay. I don't. He probably thought, well, okay, Bigfoot nuts, So then he called me a couple of weeks later. He had been out on his back. He'd come up for the weekend. He was sitting out on his back porch, and he bought some new night vision equipment. And he said he was just kind of looking around, and he said, I turned to the left, and there was one sitting out in the trees over there. He could see it on his IR. And he said he jumped up, I guess he was going to get camera or something, but by the time he got everything together, it bolted. And he's got a really pretty little piece of property on the river, and it's real thick around there. So, of course, I didn't see this. He told me about it, but he doesn't really, he's not inviting people out on Bigfoot tours or anything. He doesn't have anything to gain by it. And I guess one reason I've been pretty cagey about keeping my stuff to myself is because I am writing, I wrote a novel, I'm writing a second novel, and I really don't want to go tell everybody, yes, I've seen a Bigfoot, because I don't want them, they're just, well, yeah, you're going to say that because you're writing a book. As a matter of fact, when I spoke at the conference in October, I didn't let it out there that I'd seen anything. I didn't say it while I was speaking. Now, if somebody came up and asked me, hey, have you seen anything, I'll tell them, but, yeah, I don't just blurt it out, for general consumption.
We have another question from the chat, we have another question. They want to know, does Monica still think that they're Nephilim after having these experiences with you?
Well, yeah, she does. And I have to be honest with you, I had always hidden from my faith. We didn't go to church, our family, when I was little, and I'd always kind of dodged it. And, when I got serious with Monica, if you're going to be serious with Monica, you're going to have to be serious about the Bible. You're going to have to either accept it or start reading it, or just tell her, you're either going to accept it or just tell her no, have nothing to do with it. There's not going to be any lukewarm. So I started going to church with her, and I started reading the Bible, and I started reading some of the other stuff, and looking at things from more of a biblical perspective. Now, I know, everybody has their own theories and stuff, and but, I'm a Christian now. I have been for 4 years. I got baptized 4 years ago, and I take it very seriously. And So, I mean, yes, there's all kinds of explanations for everything, but I keep my explanations now for anything nature. I'm gonna say, you know, it's something from God. Now, could these things be you know, other than the first Nephilim, supposedly there was a second, third incursion, and is this something watered down left from that? I don't know. Is it something made from the government? I don't know. Is it just a big monkey? It could be. You know, nobody knows who's right, and we've all got opinions. Now, just because I have my opinion, I don't cancel anybody else's out, because we're all coming at this thing from different perspectives and different experience. But yes, she does. She still thinks it's some form of Nephilim.
Okay. We have a little less than 15 minutes left, so I was wondering if we could talk about your book a little bit, or even your second book. And then also, follow-up, I was wondering if we could have you back on, because I didn't even make it through half of my questions.
Yeah, well, you know what? You let me start talking. Yeah, I'd love to come back.
That's the best
I tell you what,
that's the best kind of guest.
Okay, well, I'm glad I didn't let you down. But yes, go ahead and ask any
Absolutely
questions you
not.
have about either book.
Okay. Well, so I guess, all right, so you wrote your book, and the book just makes me have a million questions, too. So obviously it is fiction, but it's based on a lot of truth.
Yes.
So I guess the question I would like to get in before we run out of time is, obviously you did some research with the tribes when you did this book, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, at the time, I didn't know any Native Americans. I took the names they used for it and stuff that I would find on the internet. Now, I've had the pleasure of meeting a few, and now I can ask questions, you know, from the actual people. That actually goes perfectly into my question. Have you had any amazing stories from the tribes for this book? Well, no, not exactly. Now, there are, I have a neighbor who he's claimed to have seen them from in the same general area where I saw mine, and he's a close neighbor, and he's talked about it a little bit, but a lot of people here are tight-lipped. Funny thing, usually the most people will talk about it is around festival time. And the first year I was here, I got roped into being security, so I didn't get to do a lot of question asking. And then this past year, they had me speaking, and the wife of the director of the Taimichi Christian Mission, Christ 40 Acres, where they had actually had the festival, she was kind enough to set up a book signing for me, so I didn't really get a chance to ask a lot of questions then either. But yeah, there's more available to me now. I do know more of the people, but at the same time, some are just gonna say they don't want to talk about it, or they don't believe in it at all, you know. And then some will talk to you. It takes a little while to get people's trust, you know. And you know, most of these people up here have lived here all their lives, and they're starting to get a lot of Texans move in. So, you know, you kind of just, I try to take it easy. I don't try to, you know, like bum rush people with questions and stuff. I just kind of lay back and listen. Yeah.
Right. Of course not. Yeah. No, I think that's a good way to go about it. Okay. Well, that was my main question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, the characters in the book, the main character is Sam Redstone. He's the chief of police of Talahena, of course, fictional, and he's half Choctaw. His father, Addison Redstone, just about takes over as the main character. He just came on strong as I was writing the book. He's full-blood Choctaw and has, you know, carries the Choctaw beliefs on the thing. And, you know, basically the story is they start having problems. Some bikers get killed at a lookout near Talahena. Sam, who's the police chief, he's also an Iraq war veteran. He's assuming it's a biker war. and he's going that way. And then all of a sudden, Addison's starting to talk to him about other things. He doesn't want to believe it. Then they start noticing the military's around. There's a government agent involved. There's special forces. There's fire trucks, airplanes. No, I'm just teasing it. But I tried to cover all the areas. You hear about these government operations and cover-ups and military operations. So I tried to include all that in the book. I was trying to just cover the spectrum of the phenomenon, because that's what interests me. That's what got me hooked. It wasn't just Joe Hunter or Bob, woodsman or hiker that's seen them. You start hearing about the government knows about them. There's been actual military contact, and all that just fascinated me. So I wanted to include it in the book.
Absolutely. There are so many books out there, and you look at them, and so whenever someone's like, oh, this person wrote a book, and you're like, oh, okay, is it another, usual Bigfoot research book? And then I looked at it, and I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, this is not just another research book. Like, this is a completely different kind of book than we normally see in the community, and I love it. It's kind of a breath of fresh air to have. I know it's fiction, but just that you based it on what we all hear and deal with. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do what?
Oh, I didn't realize you'd read the book. Yeah, well, that's awesome.
I haven't read it yet. I'm waiting on it to get here.
Oh, you are?
I'm waiting very impatiently.
I hope you don't. I just heard Amazon quit all their deliveries.
They
for
did
a while,
at
while
the worst
virus
possible
thing.
time.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, it'll get there.
Yeah.
But yes, I did want to include as much of the phenomenon as possible and keep it interesting. And I did a lot of work. I mean, I really put a lot into the characters, and I thought, I've never written before, but I knew every book I'd ever enjoyed, I fell in love with a character or two. So I put a lot of work into characters, and then I started getting feedback from my sister and others. Hey, you better not let this person die. You better not let that person. Don't let something happen to her. And I thought, maybe I'm on the right track here. So.
Yeah, no, I can't wait. I can't wait to read it, and so hopefully I will get to read it before we have you back on, and then I can really drill down and ask you some questions.
Yes, that'd be great. And I was trying to have the second book out in the first quarter of 2020, but you mentioned you just had a loss in your family. Well, I lost my sister, who was my big cheerleader for writing the first one last December 2018.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And then back in September, we lost Travis, my oldest son. He had PTSD complications. He didn't get a scratch. His brother lost his legs, but Travis was okay, except he came back with PTSD, and I don't know if it was, he was on different kind of medications, and I don't know, that just caused his heart to give out. But it's been I've started writing again recently, but when that happened, and I had to speak in October, I didn't think I was going to be able to get through the speaking, and I managed, and I just told myself, I said, okay, once I get through this, I need to take some time away from this stuff. And but I have picked it up and started writing again. But when you said that earlier, I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah.
But now I'm back on it. And
it's
I
hard to
hope
keep
get
carrying
it out
on,
here.
but
yeah, it is. It is.
Do you find that that taking your mind off of everything is a little bit cathartic?
Well, it helps a little bit. The thing of it is, when I wrote the first book, I tried to use as much stuff familiar to me as possible. There's an airplane crash in the first of the book. I used one of my old squadrons from when I was in the Air Force because I was familiar with it. I kind of based Sam on the personalities of Thomas and Travis, my two oldest sons, and I actually used Thomas was in 1st Cavalry Division, so I knew the deployment dates. I had them right in my head because I lived through them. I sweated it out, waiting for them to come back. So that was easy. I had that to follow. I tried to use as much stuff as I was familiar with. So I have to be honest, when I'm writing about Sam right now, I still kind of see Travis and Thomas and, you know, so, but it's getting better. It's getting better.
That just, I mean, you're actually putting your heart and soul into this book.
Yes. Yeah, and the second book, I'll just warn people right off the bat, it's going more of a Christian spiritual direction. I am going to, in the second book, start pursuing not only the Nephilim, but other things, you know, kind of, not really like revelations in the time, but kind of going that direction and writing a story that has to do with the things they're encountering, because they're going to start encountering more than Sasquatch and just taking it down that road. And so it's going to go a little more woo. I mean, I kept it pretty much meat and potatoes, hairy beast in the first book, but now, you know, it's going to probably go a little more the woo direction. And people are going to say, well, that's not real. Well, you're right. It's not, because it's a novel, but the nice thing about a novel, if you're going to write a novel, you pretty much get liberty to make it whatever you want. So I'm still going to try to make it as interesting as possible. But, yeah, I'm kind of taking it toward a biblical perspective in the next two. I want it to end up being a trilogy. And then I would really, if I can get that done, I would love to knock out, if I can get a hold of the brothers that lived over here that from the Siege of Honobia. It's the 20th anniversary. I'd love to knock out a book on that if I can get a hold of them.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be
absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, I think that you're, you know, I think, like you said, it's a novel. You can do whatever you want with it. And I think that's a really interesting concept and direction that you're going to take the second one. So I can't wait to read it. So, again, John's book is called Relics. The first book is called Relics. It's a myth you don't believe and a reality you won't survive is the tagline. So it's on Amazon Kindle for $9.99. Paperback is $34.95. And I would go ahead and download the Kindle because you can get it instantly and don't have to wait on Amazon to decide that coronavirus, you know, they can't deliver because of that. And as he said, John is working on his second book, Relics 2. And so we are going to have him back on so that we can discuss that a little bit more and go, you know, a little bit more into detail. So thank you so much again for coming on tonight, John. You've been a fantastic guest. I've really, really enjoyed speaking with you. And
well, thank you very much.
Hopefully we can all make it to, hopefully we can all make it to Honobia to hear you live this year.
Yeah, I would love to meet you guys. Dustin, it was nice talking to you. You didn't get to say much. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's all right. Sometimes I have to let Lauren answer some question or ask some questions, so it's all right.
Okay. Well, I really enjoyed it, guys, and I deeply appreciate you letting me be on your show. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on, and I will get with you to schedule that next show.
Awesome. Thank you. You guys have a good night.
Okay. You too. All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Bigfoot Radio.